Okay, this is instructions on how to find the maximum or minimum point of a function, usually a vertex, but doesn't have to be. My calculator is a TI-83. It'll look slightly different in some of the formats, but the steps that you will take on an 85 will be the same as the ones I take on this calculator. So the first thing I need to do is get a function into the y equals. And so the function I'm going to use is going to be a parabola that opens up. It's going to have the following: x squared. So I'm just entering in x squared minus 6x plus 5. The next thing I want to do is hit zoom 6 or set an appropriate window. So I'm going to just hit zoom 6. What this does is gives me basically the home window for graphing. It goes along x, it goes from -10 over here to +10, and on y it goes from -10 up to +10. And most of the time the functions you're doing are going to show up in this window, but not always. We'll work on setting the window on a different video. For this explanation we need to not go into detail with that and just focus on finding the minimum in this case. So since my parabola opens up, I'm looking for a minimum. So once I get it in there, I'm going to hit second trace, which is calculate. So second, over here at trace, you can see barely in the yellow, up above there, calculate. And then I'm going to pick whichever thing I want to do. In this case, I'm going to be doing the minimum since my parabola opened up. It's 3, so I can always, and this is always the case, I can arrow down, or I can just hit the number 3. If I arrow down, I'll hit enter, or I can just type the number 3. You can see the cursor here flashing, and it is tracing along this parabola. So when I say trace, I do not mean hit the trace button. It's already tracing. It's got this function. Okay, if I had a different function, then I would use, if I had more than one function in a calculator, I would use these buttons to choose a different function. I'm not going to use these buttons because I only have this function in my calculator. It's asking me for left bound right here, and there's a question mark, you notice. The cursor is now at 0.5. I know my y-intercept is at 5 because the constant is 5. What I'm looking for is this point. So it says left bound, so it's any point that is left of the minimum. Here's my minimum, I'm to the left. It doesn't matter above or below, that's irrelevant, only left or right. So what I'm really thinking about here is x. Is my x number left or less than the minimum point? It is right now, and so I can just hit enter right away. Now it's asking me for the right bound. The right bound does the same thing except on the other side. So I can do it two ways. I can trace over, and notice it's tracing along the curve. I do not hit the trace button. All I have to do is get past that point. As soon as I see it starting to go back up, or if this was opening down, start to go back down, then I'm fine. I'm past the point. I'm to the right of the vertex. The vertex is right here. I'm to the right. It doesn't matter how far past. I could keep going. I don't want to go off the screen to the right. So there's no point in continuing. This is good enough. It says guess, and this just offers you an opportunity to approximate where it is and see if you can guess correctly. So we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to hit enter again. Okay, and it's going to show me the values at the bottom of the screen. So I get 3, -4. So now I know the minimum value is -4. The coordinates are 3, -4. I also know my axis of symmetry is at x equals 3. There's a lot of information you can get from these two numbers right here. And that's all you need to do. The one caveat, the one thing you need to keep in mind is that sometimes the process a calculator uses approximates, and it doesn't get it exactly right based on the algorithm that the calculator uses. I believe that it is guessing and checking on either side, and so what happens is, and what you need to be aware of, is that it might display, instead of 3, 2.999999, lots of 9s, and maybe an 8 over here somewhere. If you get something like 2 point and then it's all 9s, you can assume that that's 3. Or if it was 3.000000 and then maybe a 1 over here. Same thing with y. It's really the only time I'm aware of where the calculator is just doing its best but doesn't necessarily hit it exactly. So you got to bear that in mind. Okay, so that's it.